Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. I'm going to skip through all my slides here today. Not all of them, but most of them to get to this one so that I can dive into the demo that I have for you all right after this. It is especially exciting. I did fly in from Pittsburgh yesterday, and I just found out today, though, that my boss also flew in for this demo. That has about a 70% chance of working, just so you all know. So please, don't take it too seriously here. But I want to set the stage before I get started and just dive into showing you the Keboola platform altogether. And even before I do that, how many people have actually seen Keboola as an interface and used it for anything whatsoever? Okay, that's helpful to know. Thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about the philosophy that we've been thinking about when we talk and figure out how we want to develop AI into our product itself and how you all can use it, therefore. We've thought about 3 different categories that we've split up the use cases into and the way that we want to deliver it to our customers. The first, we consider the assist stage. This is really where AI is helping you out more than anything else. It's a supporting role in anything that you may be doing. However, the tasks themselves aren't fundamentally changing. You're still going about your business as you typically would. In the augment stage, we're getting a little bit fancier with it. We're really capable of enhancing what humans are doing and having computers do a little bit more for us independently. And in the amplify stage, more importantly than anything, we're actually expanding what's possible. It's no longer just making something easier, taking less time, but it's really expanding what you're capable of doing, what you and your teams are capable of doing. And very loosely, there are 3 things that are involved in this. And I actually recently have decided that we need to stop saying LLMs. I don't know if you all have noticed, right? But the second that ChatGPT was able to take an image and then talk about it or generate an image, we were talking about multimodal models. People talk about world models now, right? And it's a matter of what they're embedding over. And it's not just text-based, but they're looking at videos, right? They're looking at images. They're looking at sensor data even, and all these other things. So I've been trying myself to stop using LLMs. I like saying foundation models now. I think that really fits everything that is being put out there. And LLMs, foundation models, see, I'm going to make that mistake already. Foundation models are the key to everything. They're the main ingredient in everything that we're going to do. And we take them as a commodity at this point. We trust that some of these companies are going to produce really good models that we can use either via API or via deploying into our own infrastructure, right? Maybe fine-tuning it and everything else. So we take those as a commodity. We believe very deeply that they are going to be there. It takes a lot of money to make one that's half good, right? So it's not for everybody, and not everybody should go build foundation models. It does need to be specialized. And then in there comes some concerns about having this be, right, another way to limit access to certain groups and other countries or nations even. Tools are the second piece. Guy did a great job talking about this and introducing it, I think. Tools can mean a lot of different things for ChatGPT. They are bad at math, right? LLMs are really bad at math, but Wolfram Alpha is great at math. And if I were to try to actually compute a derivative, something like that, I would not do it myself via paper. I would go to a calculator, maybe Wolfram Alpha. And it just so happens that identifying the parameters that you need to put into a tool like that are natural language. And they're actually quite easy to come up with. Typically, structuring them in some form, like JSON, is also fairly easy. In this sense, agents, LLMs, foundation models are all based on the ability to have a specialized set of tools over whatever ecosystem you're actually interested in interacting with. So whether you're a student who needs help with your homework, having something like access to a Wolfram Alpha tool is very useful. If you're a data engineer or somebody else using Keboola, having access to tools that can programmatically access and act upon our metadata, data, our components, and everything else is what becomes the most important thing. And the most recently, and one of the reasons why frameworks like LangChain, Llama Index have become really popular, is because we want these things to do more without us intervening directly at every single step, right? We want them to be able to take a series of sequential steps more autonomously, thinking through what they should do in order. That's where agents come in. This is a very academic topic, which is interesting, right? Because what we see these days, and it's really fun to work with this, is that a paper comes out, right? And it's on archive or something. And weeks later, sometimes days later, some Python developers have gone into the LangChain repository and implemented it completely in a really easy way for you, right? And we're seeing this basic traversal from academia to development in code really, really quickly, especially with agents. But there's one other thing about this, which is that you almost never see agents actually in production in any software whatsoever today, right? And there's a reason for that. And we all know it. It's that they're non-deterministic. we can't really predict what they're going to output completely. And this is a problem for our SREs and our engineering teams because they made this button because they want exactly what they know is going to happen when you click that button. And they hate it when we say, but we don't know what's going to happen if somebody clicks this button. And we actually don't know whether it'll output in the structure that the UI team is expecting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That makes it really hard. It makes the tech people on this side, although they're interested, they want this in the product, there's a lot of danger to it. Not only when it comes to regulation, but when it comes to your software and it being a fragile thing altogether. And that is, yes, me also setting the stage for how likely my demo is to have a few errors inside of it. And in my demo, what I want to show you is Kai. Kai stands for Keboola AI, and it's also the name of our co-pilot. I also like the idea of Kai Pilot. The name is not finalized. If you look in Slido, I actually have a question in there for you all. If you think of something very interesting that you think would be a good name for a co-pilot inside of Keboola, throw it in there. I won't promise royalties or anything. But yeah, please throw it in there. I'm curious to know what you have to say, even if it's Bodie McBoatface or whatever else you guys come up with. I'm really, really curious. And with Kai, one of the first things that we set out to tackle was elevating team dynamics across all the people who are collaborating in the platform day in and day out, right? We know that one of the key ways that we can create value with generative AI specifically is by saving time, right? Saving time becomes a really important thing, especially with knowledge workers. Saving time when you're searching for stuff, this is really a value that a lot of companies try to sell these days. And saving time doesn't itself generate value, right? It's something that we can say saves you money eventually. But what we can do with AI and having a co-pilot in the system, again, is have your engineers, analysts, and business users speak the same language more easily, right? You're going to be on the same page more often. It's fewer meetings that you have to have with fewer people to all ensure that you're aligned on the same topic. So that's really enough talking. Let's try it. So we can move over to the demo. Wow, that was very cool. This is Keboola, and I'm in a real Keboola customers project right now, Ascend Climbing, which is a real customer. I used to work with them. I'm also a big rock climber. I love rock climbing, so you can come talk to me about that after this as well. And they have a series of climbing gyms in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, and they are one of our first beta customers with this. It's a really fun thing. I hope that showing you all of these things on a real customer's project will make it all resonate more. So let's try it out. The first thing that I want to show you, and hopefully try to walk you through, is using Kai to help us onboard a junior analyst, literally. And I had that thought a long time ago, and we've been using the term junior analyst, but I want to imagine that next Monday, I have somebody who's scheduled to start being onboarded. Maybe it's an intern, maybe it is just some new analyst that's working at my company. And that is a very daunting thing for me to think about. I've got all my tasks to work on, and now I also need to create some sort of onboarding guide for this person because I don't want to leave them hanging. And their job's important, and I want them to be up and running as quickly as possible. So with Kai's help, I'm going to start by trying to get a quick explanation of what's going on inside of this project. And this is all, again, like this is real. So I've thought about this prompt a lot though, right? I didn't just come up with this prompt yesterday. I put some thought into these to make sure that I could get the answer that I want out of this. And one of the things that I struggled with when I was putting this demo together is how much time do I spend focused on Keboola itself, our basic terminology, and all the concepts that we use, versus how much time I should spend showing you all this AI stuff. I decided, though, that I can use Kai to help me kill two birds with one stone, try to do both. It did mean that I have to figure out how I can vamp for some amount of time as Kai responds. It is not immediate. I think you all know this as interacting with ChatGPT and everything else. It takes a minute to think. And it's helpful when you have the streaming responses that show you it's typing. I didn't get to that. We didn't get to that by the time of this demo. So that being said, let's take a look at what was output here. And you don't have to read it word for word, I promise. But the key is the structure that it output. This is all true. This is things that are going on inside of this project, and the way that Kai reasoned about the entire data architecture that we have underneath. So yes, these are some nicely grouped sources and integrations that Ascend Climbing happens to be working with. It's not very surprising that there would be some level of social media, right, advertising, and yeah, they have a Shopify store where they're selling a few types of climbing items. Another very big thing, right, is the business applications. Those are going to be all of the email marketing, everything like that they're going and working with. There is one thing that it missed, though, and just to be clear, like I want to not just try to sugarcoat everything that you're seeing here, and I want to highlight why this isn't a feature today for you all, right? This is in R&D. That was a deliberate choice. That's not really my title, but this is very experimental. Some of the most important sources to this company, the only reason I know that is because I know the sources that are important to them, right? So this isn't something that you would be able to pick up on. But they're MySQL databases that sit in the actual primary systems. If you ever have gone to a climbing gym, you've checked in, you've bought something, these are the primary systems that the gym uses. It's not showing me them here. I don't love that, right? It's actually not, wouldn't be useful necessarily to somebody being onboarded. But nonetheless, it's grouped together all of the things that are going on in terms of bringing data into this project. And now we've given a few very basic explanations here of the types of processing that are occurring underneath. So yes, we're using SQL and Python code to do stuff. It doesn't really say what we're doing with that, and that's okay. You still see the fluffy language that you would imagine with a vague prompt in ChatGPT. That's also true. Geocoding and RFM segmentation are two very specific ones for it to choose to pick out of every single thing going on in this project. Are they the most important? Certainly not necessarily, but they are really good examples, actually, of the types of things going on, right? We are calling an API based on whatever information to get the most accurate address we can in certain situations, and that is an example of what this company is doing inside of Keboola. Moving forward, the other structure of this here is that I'm going to actually skip over some of this. This is all, again, still true. There's Snowflake within the Keboola platform itself. They're pushing data to BigQuery to power some reporting. One part that I really like about this answer, and I've seen it consistently in all the answers I've been experimenting with, is that based on our storage naming conventions, it's inferred the raw versus modeled data that we have access to and which ones you would probably want to touch for reporting versus which ones just came into the project from the source system, right? I think that's really cool, and it shows that we can help you narrow down over the 100 objects that might have the exact same name, which one you should actually be working with, right? Now, let's try to take this task a little further. We're still just trying to onboard someone. This is all very vague, basic information. I haven't even told Kai that I want to onboard somebody yet. So I'm going to put in another prompt here, which makes it more specific. So I'll hit enter so that I can talk while I'm waiting for it to reply here. So I'm onboarding this person. I want them to think about retail performance. Those are the two words I've given it that aren't vague in this, right? Like that's what I'm, and in a specific source system, which happens to be Approach. So that's what I've given it to go on here in terms of refining what it has, and it has access to a lot here, right? If we were to just feed all of the raw metadata in from this project, we would be getting very close to hitting the context window for Gemini Ultra 1.5 or whatever. We'd be up to 1 million tokens. There's nothing that a model can do with 1 million tokens sensibly. We know from experiments that it forgets things at random parts of token sequences. Typically, having less context is best. Here in this response, and this was something I tried a few days before I was finalizing all of this, and I was genuinely amazed that I got a response as good as this. And I do kind of hope at this point, you can forget everything I'm saying. You can completely, zone me out and just be thinking about how this could be applied to you, right? I want you to be spinning off those own ideas about how you could potentially be using this, the types of questions you could ask. But for me, this is actually something I've had to do, right? Bring somebody on to go help take over some specific thing, and it really would take hours, potentially weeks to get right. We've done some internal testing, some studies with some other customers about this, and we have seen that it's going to shave off at least 3 weeks from most onboarding processes when it comes to actually getting up and running, creating queries that are generating value. And the reason being, there are a few reasons, but again, it's going to follow a very similar structure, and that's what I really want you to focus on here. We have our data sources, we know that. This one does do a better job at explaining the importance of the MySQL databases. That's interesting to me. And it's given us some very basic examples of the types of components that exist within Keboola, right? Now, components, and I love this sentence, they're the building blocks of our data pipelines. So whether that's some source that we're pulling data in from, or it's some enrichment, like a geocoding augmentation step, those are going to be components. And this is really great to me too, right? Because again, whether you're some person being onboarded or the audience of this very condensed demo, you can use this to digest all of this information very quickly. Let me just scroll through C here. Because of the amount of time that I want to spend on every little piece of this, I'm going to click forward and just continue on here. We're still in this onboarding scenario, and what you'll see on this screen is a different manifestation of Kai that falls under the broad category of what we call passive or implicit prompts, right? And these are the instances where we deliberately want to not have you copy and paste something into a new window. We want you to stay in the flow, stay focused, without having to switch around things. What this is doing is, after indexing your data, right, looking through all of these pieces of metadata that we have, another important point that Guy got really right in his other talk is all about the cumulative effects of the better metadata that you have in the ecosystem that you're working with. So the power of any copilot that you might be using is all about the power of that metadata in the ecosystem. And when you're enriching these things, whether that's using an LLM to generate a description for a table, that description becomes useful when you're searching for that table later on, right? And it gets more advanced because one of the things that I'll show, and I just want to hint at it quickly, is we've been developing a Lineage solution that's capable of very accurate lineage throughout your entire Keboola organization. It's down to the column level, and it's not just in Snowflake SQL dialect. It's through Python transformations, getting moved over to SQL transformations, and everything in between. And it's really exciting. And that is one of those things that lets us derive primary and foreign key relationships. And that is one of those things that makes it easier to generate SQL queries. So these are examples of these questions. I don't love these questions, so I'm going to go to a different place in storage and try to ask a different one. So let me search here for summer camp. And let's click on this bucket. So yes, the climbing gym has summer camps, unsurprisingly, and a bunch of kids come into the gym. And let's click on this first question here, which again, very easy question. This is a business level question. It's going to be no more than 5 lines of SQL code, but it's just a list of all the unique summer camp names along with the signups for each one. And I think you might be surprised actually at how quickly 2024 is already filling up. So if you needed a reminder about signing your kids up, this might be a good one. This is going to take a minute though. Does anybody have any jokes that they want to tell in the meantime? Maybe not. Yeah?
To do it across your entire organization, it's just a totally different game.
You have another point to add on top of that? So, okay. What? I'm sorry, I don't know necessarily what I'm... Oh, are these all ideas? Goose, Lex, okay. Well, let's get back to those ideas maybe. Okay, so... So here it's returned a SQL query, very simple SQL query, and the output of the results here. There are a few things that I would critique about it. I don't like the bullet point lists in Markdown. That's not ideal. So let's try something, maybe get it to format in a table. Might not work, might take longer than it should as well. But as we can see, it did get us the answer, right? And to me, the interesting thing, I think about who somebody would be who works for a climbing gym who would be curious about this answer, right? Our youth director. And I think about what their, and I really don't mean this in a bad way at all, right? But I think about what their skill set is to be able to answer this question and how much manual time it would take. Oh, it did it, great. So, and how much manual time it would take for them to actually go through this, right? It means going into whatever system we happen to be using in the gym and clicking through each booking because, right, going to access the data through the database is already off the table. And now we're clicking through each one and seeing exactly how many kids are in this long list, maybe even counting them, who knows? It depends on the UI of that system. But here, he can really get started very quickly with a question that's already been generated for you. And yes, we can ask follow-ups, all of these other things. I'm going to try to show, oh, and maybe one other thing that I'll show while we're here. We can also, of course, explain the query, which is not that this one is very useful to explain, right? I think we could all explain it. And maybe actually, another fun thing, but I'm okay with this too, right? The explanation is longer than the query itself. That's not helpful to anybody, really. And But maybe should we just decline to give you an explanation for something that simple, right? Like, what is it that we do? Because an LLM, any foundation model, is going to want to spit out this text. It's going to want to give you more than you even need. And it's better, from our perspective, to give you no answer than a bad answer, right? Like, we'd rather just not respond at all than give you something misleading, something that is seemingly correct, but actually not correct under the hood, right? When you can't tell the difference, that's really dangerous. And so we would much rather just decline altogether, right? And that is one of the reasons why this is still experimental and not available to everybody. I'm going to touch on one other thing quickly. So far, I've kind of shown through some of the ways that Kai can be used. I'm going to show you one other way that it can be used. And in this sense, and this is actually also a very true thing, and I got this message the other day, right? But it's like, oh, we're going to switch over our payroll reporting system from this to this thing. And we, of course, want our reporting to follow along with that, and we want all the systems to sync together. And this is a big task no matter what, right? Kai does not necessarily even make this task much easier. And depending on how long it takes to reply, what it should do, though, is make you identifying all of the pieces that are involved in this particular use case much easier, right? Giving you exactly what you need to know and what you should edit to make this possible. And here it is. This is indeed true. So these are two transformations that are involved in calculating a bunch of stuff related to labor reporting of this climbing gym. And if I were to get started integrating some new system today, this would be a very good place to start, right? I would go see however many tables and what tables they're using from these systems. And yes, it's not that we already have this data brought in from some extractor, but we know we need to do that. We know that we need to write the code anyway. And this is a really good way to get started. So let me let me go start here. So let me click on this. And what we have is a transformation in Keboola. That doesn't necessarily matter. And I'm going to click on this table. I'm not going to show you the table, but what I'm going to show you is the fun part, really. One of the things that I think is most exciting to show you, and also probably the least exciting to see, maybe. But I hope that it speaks for itself, which is that this lineage graph, although fairly simple, is completely accurate and generated with two methods, right? The first we are using, especially with SQL, static analysis methods. There are a lot of parts of this that are deterministic, but not always. And every dialect has a lot of different things going on. When you start talking about functions in SQL code, things get harder. It's not completely deterministic. And we're falling back on LLM strategies. This example is not very complex. I'm going to go pull through to another more complex example. And in this case, we're going to take a look at let's take a look at, actually, let me go back here. I'm still going to be able to use Kai as a starting point for what I'd like to look at. And in this case, I'm going to look at revenue KPIs. I'm not interested in the bucket. But it shouldn't take long for Kai to respond, so we can see what it tells us here. And again, these are all starting points for analyses that you can continue to follow up on, and they will all trigger the same SQL flow right afterwards. But going to what I really want to show you, I'm going to click on this revenue KPIs table and go back over to the data lineage tab. And now, that's actually not the one I wanted to show you either here. So give me 1 second. Hang on. And I'm going to go to mapping. This table should be great. Okay, look at that. Wow. Okay, so this one is very interesting, and it might not be immediately evident, right? But what it's doing, there are two source systems that this gym has used over time. And if you go to any climbing gym in the world, I promise you it's one of these two, Rock Gym Pro or Approach. And at one point, they had to actually have different revenue categories in each and reconcile those as they migrated systems. This is a very common pattern that we see for all different types of customers. And in this flow, we can see that the data is being aggregated into some table that is then being used for forecasting later on. Of course, we're doing that forecasting in Python, and we're generating this lineage view all the way through, regardless of the language being used itself, right? And that's really hard, because a column can end up in a piece of Python code in a lot of different ways, right? It can be pandas, it can be a lot of things. But we're able, with 99% accuracy, to generate this lineage code for you. And that's really exciting because of what it does when we talk about using the metadata in the ecosystem, right, as a cumulative step to enriching and making the responses of any type of model better. So when we're talking about how good our copilot is, this stuff matters a lot, right? And all those details matter a lot, and that's what we're focused on. So that's all the time I have worked better than I thought it would, frankly. So thank you all for entertaining me. And yeah, if you have questions, I'll be around. We'll be here. Thank you.